Even when we're not talking about Arch Linux, the Arch Wiki is generally thought of as one of the best Linux wikis. If you're on Ubuntu or Debian or Gentoo or anything else, you're probably still going to find the information you're looking for on the Arch Wiki. Basically, the only time you don't is when it comes to packaged installation and other things which are very distro specific, but Pipewire configuration, hey, Arch Wiki, text editor, desktop environment, Arch Wiki is gonna be there. And this doesn't just happen by chance. This happens through careful management and curation, and other projects like Debian do have a wiki. Most distros out there have some sort of wiki. And in a lot of cases, you know, they're pretty good, right? Like, I don't want to hate on the Debian wiki, but the Arch Wiki, right? Like, the Arch Wiki is so much better than everything else out there, maybe with the exception of the Gentoo Wiki, but the Gentoo Wiki is very Gentoo themed. And recently there was a talk between Arch Wiki and Debian Wiki involved people, Debian Wiki maintainers, leading to the beginning of a revamp of the Debian Wiki. Arch shares its wiki strategy with Debian. On the Arch side, we have Jacob Klinkovsky and Vladimir Lavalade. Probably butchered those. And then on the Debian side is Thomas Lange. So the Arch Wiki was established in 2004. This is about 2 years after the Arch project itself was first started. The project originally used PHP Wiki as its backend, and that hasn't been done for a very long time, very quickly migrating over to MediaWiki, MediaWiki being the same thing used by Wikipedia, and frankly, most big wikis out there. The wiki maintenance and translation teams were established around about 2010, and the maintenance team is responsible for the contribution guidelines, style conventions, organization, and anything else the contributors need to know. So if you want to contribute to the Arch Wiki, this is the first place you should come to. It explains everything you need to know, all of the rules you need to follow, all of the general guidelines, how to actually, you know, create new pages, all of this good stuff. And then also importantly is the styling for the pages, because it's one thing to have really good information and the wiki would still be useful with that, but by having a clear and set style guide, you know as a user where information on every page is going to be located. You're not dealing with completely different structures everywhere you go. Today, the wiki has more than 4,000 topic pages. It has close to 30,000 pages if you count talk pages, redirects, and help pages. Obviously, very small in comparison to something like Wikipedia, for example, but in the context of a wiki for a software project, I don't know how many there are that might be bigger. And here we have some graphs on the amount of edits per month and active users per month, with a spike around about 2013 and another spike in 2022. I'm not sure what this was. Like, a lot of things in the Linux world kind of peaked around this point. I don't really know what was going on back then. And then here in 2022, obviously you have things like the Steam Deck, you have COVID, all of this stuff happening at the same time, so of course more people are going to be online. Since 2006, the wiki has had more than 840,000 edits by more than 86,000 editors. The project is averaging more than 2,000 edits by about 300 active contributors each month. Klinkovsky noted that this used to be quite a large number. Obviously, you know, Wikipedia is so massive now. If we're talking, you know, back in the early 2000s, yeah, that many people would be absolutely insane. So the strengths of the Arch Wiki. Firstly, comprehensive content and a very large coverage of various topics. This included not just how to run Arch Linux, but how to run important software on the distribution. This is a big part of the reason why it's so useful for things outside of Arch Linux, as a lot of these tools are commonly shared across distros. Arch isn't a weird distro using weird esoteric software in most cases. It's pretty standard. It's a pretty run-of-the-mill vanilla Linux distro. It just happens to have updates quicker than something like an Ubuntu, for example. Next thing is high-quality, up-to-date content. Arch is a rolling release, so you want to make sure the content on the wiki is also rolling in that same way. It's always including new options, including new features that might be relevant. If things are deprecated, if things are changed, they should be reflected in the wiki as well, and this is only possible thanks to a very involved community. He noted that most of the edits on the Arch Wiki were made by contributors outside of the maintenance team, so there is a big community of people that, even though they're not directly involved in the team, still want the wiki to be as good as possible, most likely because they found a solution for something, and honestly, yeah, you could say, oh, it's because they want to help other people, but in many cases, it might just be because they don't want to forget it, so they add it to the wiki so that when they need to remember it, they know it's going to be there. Now, of course, there are cases where less popular software does fall out of date and the wiki page isn't exactly the most helpful. In a lot of the cases, those do get tagged to say that there might be a problem here. Sometimes things do slip through the cracks, though, and that's just naturally what you're going to have with a really big wiki, and then parts of the wiki that some people just don't really get involved with. And the last big strength that wasn't really an intention of the Arch Wiki is people outside the Arch community know about the Arch Wiki, use the Arch Wiki. Here's a quote from Edward Snowden talking about how he can't find information on any other site out there, but the Arch Wiki is gonna be something where it has useful information, and one of the few sites that still has just useful information. And the contribution guidelines and processes have a lot to do with the quality of the content on the wiki. Contributors have to follow 3 fundamental rules. First is they must use the edit summary to explain what has been done and why. If we're talking in the context of a git commit, they need to explain what the commit is doing. Like, why has this commit been made? Why is this change being made? The second rule is that contributors should not make complex edits all at once. As much as possible, contributors should do some kind of atomic editing where each change is independent of the other ones. Once again, the same way you reasonably manage a Git repo. Make small, independent changes, so if something needs to be reverted, you can easily revert that change without changing a bunch of other things at the same time. And the third rule is that major changes or rewrites should be announced on a topics talk page to give others who are watching the topic a chance to weigh in. So if you want to make some massive restructuring of a page or split a page into a bunch of other smaller pages, let people know you're doing so. Let people know so they can get involved and they can say, hey, that's a good idea, hey, that's a bad idea, maybe we do this thing instead, and ultimately you get a better product because of it. And the team also has 3 content guidelines as well. Firstly is don't repeat yourself, the dry principle. A topic should only exist in one place rather than being repeated on multiple pages. The reason for this is, let's say a topic becomes out of date. If it exists in one place and you just link to that topic, well, that's one edit you need to make. If it exists duplicated in a bunch of places, well, you might change 3 of those, but then there's a 4th that remains outdated. Now you have this weird, inconsistent wiki where users don't really know what the correct answer is. Also, the Arch Wiki employed a simple but not stupid approach to the documentation. This means the documentation should be simple to read and maintain, but not offer too much hand-holding. Users need to be willing to learn and may need to read through more than one page to find the information they need to do something. This isn't a tutorial, this isn't a walkthrough, this isn't a guide. It is a wiki. It should provide you the information to get you started. It should provide solutions to common problems. But it isn't a solution for everything. It is a starting point, and if you need to go to the actual documentation, it should indicate to you that, hey, we don't cover everything. The documentation is going to have additional things. Here may be where you can find the documentation. And the final guideline, which frankly, I don't think in many cases they do super well, is it being Arch-centric. The content on the site may be useful for users running different Linux distributions. I would say in most cases it is, and contributions are welcome that may apply to other distributions. But something that will not work on Arch as is not something we will be hosting on our site. So if you want to talk about, a package version that is up to date on Arch, but is not up to date on Ubuntu, and you want to include that old information from Ubuntu, well, that's not relevant to Arch. Or if it's a package that's not available in the main repos or the AUR, well, that's not relevant to Arch because Yes, you could, compile it yourself, but then you would need to make pages for literally every piece of software ever. If it is in the main repos of the AUR, it can be on the wiki. If it's not, then it's not. That, he said, allowed the maintenance team to be focused on the content Arch provides and helps to keep maintenance more manageable. They are managing the Arch Wiki, not the Linux distro wiki, not the wiki of every single piece of software that will ever be present on Linux. Do I think there is value in a more Wikipedia style covering everything under the sun? Yes, and I do think the ATL wiki hopefully becomes the thing that can sort of fill that gap there. But the Arch team knows that they can't do everything, and they want to just make something as polished as possible. When it comes to wiki maintenance, the project has tools and templates to help make life easier for contributors. So again, if you don't have something like this, like with the style guide, like with the contribution guide, you're going to have people trying to do all of their own things. Having a template gives you a sort of guideline of what you need to do. Now, the templates might not cover every single case, but it's going to cover a lot of them, and it's going to make things generally more consistent in a easier to manage way. So you're not worrying about managing styling, you're managing the content. A reviewer might apply an accuracy template, for instance, which will add it to a page that lists all of the content that has been flagged as possibly inaccurate. Now, it might not be intentionally inaccurate, it might be out of date, it might be on like a slightly different version, maybe a version not used on Arch, but it's still something where if you want to know things that you want to fix, you can very easily go through this list and find things which have been marked as inaccurate. The templates are usually used and acted on by people, but the project also has bots that can add some templates. For example, a dead link. You don't need users going around and making sure links are dead. That's a pretty easy thing to automate. And everyone can participate in review, not just maintainers of the wiki. And this is a good thing because there's only so many maintainers, but there's a lot more people that use the wiki who might want to get involved and might want to become an active contributor. And being involved in that review process, especially for things you might know quite a bit about, especially for your like little niche that you really care about, is really valuable for the project. He explained that it was not possible for the maintenance team to review everything. So much of the review is done by people interested in specific topics who watch pages to see when changes were made. If people spot errors, they are empowered to fix them on their own or to use the templates to flag them for others to address. The maintainers are there to make authoritative decisions like removing a page or things like that, and mediate disputes when the individual contributors are not able to come to decisions themselves. Klinkovsky referred to watching and reviewing content on the wiki as patrolling. They even have a page here as like a part of the procedure page on what it means to patrol around the wiki. The Arch Wiki on the Arch Wiki is just as good as every other part of the Arch Wiki. And he said there were some basic rules that should be followed, starting by assuming that everybody is acting in good faith. You can tell pretty obviously when someone is a malicious actor, right? Like, if somebody is clearly including information that doesn't belong on the wiki, you know, like, it's obvious when it's really bad. But a lot of other people might just be trying to add something which doesn't necessarily fit on that page. Maybe it's not specific to Arch. Maybe it is something which applies more to a different distro. And these people aren't trying to, graffiti the wiki. They just think they know what to do, but they're kind of misguided. One thing I will say, though, when it comes to graffiti and vandalism is with the recent AUR malware, with the DDoS of the Arch infrastructure, I hope we don't start seeing more in the way of outright vandalism. The second rule, he said, is when in doubt, discuss changes with others before making a hasty decision. If a change must be reverted, then a reviewer should always explain why it was reverted. This gives the original contributor a chance to come back and fix the problems or address it in a different way. What you don't want to see happen is edit wars. This is a link over to the Media Wiki. This is something very common on Wikipedia where two people who have modification rights are arguing over what the correct thing to include on the page is. So they just revert each other's changes, continue to make new changes, and it just becomes a big mess that somebody else needs to mediate. And by creating this environment where you feel like you can actually make changes, you can contribute, you can discuss these changes, it encourages people to not just make a singular change, but to learn the guidelines, to learn the style, to keep contributing, and then teach other people these guidelines, and hopefully keep the wiki alive and healthy. Arch has support forums such as IRC, which, you know, I'm sure somebody uses, and when people ask for help there, they are pointed to the wiki because there is always a solution on the Arch Wiki. In the rare event the wiki does not have the solution he said, we gently point them to where the page with the content needs to be and invite the user to add it, even if it's not perfect the first time. So even if your initial way of writing it doesn't fully align with the Arch Wiki, you still should feel empowered to go and add it if you have a solution to your problem, because you may not be the only person with that problem, and having this explanation here might benefit other people. The wiki is a collaborative work, and everyone should feel welcome to add to it. This is not something that can just be maintained by the Arch Linux team or by a single individual. This is something that only works because so many people want to get involved. However, the Arch Wiki is not perfect, and it does have some weaknesses. The first weakness is there is a lot to learn about contributing to the wiki, and newcomers can get tripped up. For example, the dry principle is difficult for new contributors, or a newcomer might add a large chunk of content into a page that should be broken up into several different pages. So you might talk about configuring something in Pipewire and Wire Plumber and Pipewire Jack, and it logically makes sense to put all these things together, but maybe there are separate pages where all of this information should be included instead. Then there is MediaWiki itself and the MediaWiki markup, which is considered antiquated and acknowledged that the style conventions for the Arch Wiki are not obvious either. It can take a lot of reading, cross-referencing for a new contributor to make a content contribution correctly. I would say the best thing you can probably do is look at existing pages and follow the style on the existing pages. Just copy what they're doing, and then if you're unsure about something you're including, search the style guide for that thing that you're adding. MediaWiki has a lot of strengths. It is a battle-proven software. It is the de facto standard platform for wikis. It has a nice API that can be used for integration with external applications such as bots. But MediaWiki is a weakness as well. The platform was primarily developed for Wikipedia, and its developers are from Wikipedia. Sometimes they do things that make sense on Wikipedia, and not on the Arch Wiki. And then you have the fact that the markup language is very weird and hard to understand both for humans and machines. Most people nowadays are pretty confident with Markdown, but the MediaWiki markup is different. It's weird and fragile. Changing a single token can completely break a page. Also, it's difficult to write a proper parser for the language because there's no formal specification for the language. Basically, the only specification is the reference implementation in the form of MediaWiki. So at any point, this can change, and you don't really know why something is broken. So even if you had a perfect parser one day, it might not work the same or perfectly the next. And because the wiki is so big at this point, moving over to something else, that would be a really big challenge to do. Now, because the wiki is primarily developed by individuals, by volunteer contributors, it is driven by popularity which pages are going to be the most up-to-date. This is not necessarily a weakness, but you will see pages where it's a topic core to Arch, like the AUR, or modifying the wiki, or Pipewire, or Wayland, or X11. Pages like this are going to be pretty up-to-date with pretty good information, but there are random small applications on the Arch Wiki where they may not be as detailed as you would like them to be. They may be kind of out of date. They may have a lot of problems just because nobody's really actively looking at those pages. So if there is some tool that you happen to use and you notice the wiki page isn't as detailed as it could be, well, that's somewhere you could very easily get involved. Now, there are several areas that are open for improvement related to community involvement and support tools for editors where everyone's workflow could be improved. One example of community involvement would be to work with derivatives from Arch Linux such as SteamOS or Arch ports to CPU architecture other than x86-64. Currently, Arch is only supported on x86-64, but the project has passed an RFC to expand the number of architectures that would be supported. The ARM version of Arch is like a separate endeavor, but as that gets brought into main Arch, that's something that should be included within the wiki as well, and there's going to be some different things that need to be added there. Also, the project does have two tools for editors to use to make their work a bit easier: Wikiscripts and WikiMonkey. Wikiscripts is a collection of Python scripts used to automate common actions, such as checking if links actually work, and WikiMonkey is an interactive JavaScript tool that runs in the browser, and can help contributors to improve their content. There is much more that could be added or improved, like linting software for grammar issues. The team might also consider incorporating machine learning or AI techniques into editor workflow. However, this needs to be done carefully because you want to have the wiki be as up-to-date and accurate as possible. So you wouldn't want to have a situation where you are generating the content and it's just absolute nonsense. But there may be ways you can incorporate this tooling to sort of guide you in a direction to deal with those sort of outside issues rather than the core content of the pages. Either way, it needs to be done with extreme care. There are people that have tried contributing to the Arch Wiki using AI, but obviously it's not trained on the style guidelines and the content doesn't fit. Using AI for problem solving also prevents people from fully understanding a solution or how things work. That may be a problem for the whole of society, he said, not just Arch Linux. Then there is the matter of the scraper bots. So they do have Anubis set up, and they were running it for a period and then ended up removing it because the bot sort of died down. But it is something that is still there that can be brought back up at any point in time. Another non-technical problem the project faces is burnout. Contributor burnout is a real problem, and that people who've stayed a long time usually start with a good, strong string of changes, but they end up tapering their amount of contributions. This happens in every project. You're excited initially, and then when you get into the swing of things, you know, that excitement quickly dies down when you're just doing that same run-of-the-mill changes, and there's not really anything you can do about that. That's like a real personal problem, but it is a problem that every project has to necessarily deal with. Now, following this session, there was a discussion with what Debian should do with their wiki. So, Debian was using something known as Moin 1.9, which depends on Python 2.7. So it's, you know, a little bit old at this point. And since then, there is a new wiki in process right now available at wiki2025.debian.org, but eventually this is going to become the main wiki instead. It is obviously powered by MediaWiki. It's going to require a lot of changes to get things involved in that, but that is the direction they are now going. So hopefully the Debian wiki over the next coming years can become something at the same level as the Arch wiki, or at the same level as the Gentoo wiki, and even for people who are not necessarily on Debian, becomes an amazing resource to use. One thing that is amusing, though, is the presenters from the Arch side did say they wanted to make the Arch wiki to be Arch-centric, and the Debian person said, "I think you failed because a lot of people are reading your really great big wiki. They want it to be Arch-centric, and it is technically Arch-centric, but the users are definitely not only Arch users, and that's a good thing. It means they've created a good general wiki, and Arch Linux is a, you know, it's a pretty vanilla distro. Again, it's something which isn't running weird custom packages. It's something where what you have is going to apply to pretty much everyone, albeit maybe more up-to-date than Debian stable, for example. So I wish the Debian wiki maintainers the best of luck. I wish the Arch wiki maintainers the best of luck. I hope to see the Debian wiki become something which people talk about as this amazing resource. I hope it goes well, and I hope the Arch wiki keeps going strong long into the future. If you want to get involved, I'll leave links to where to get involved with the Arch wiki down below. Go check it out. Go update your favorite tool. Go update some tool that maybe you use and nobody else even remembers exists. Yeah. So, if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Liberapay, linked in the description. down below. That's going to be it for me, and we need the Brodie Wiki.
Something like this.